Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag. From the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
Well, we're back again this week. John is our correspondent on the scene. He's calling in today because his duties as a assistant athletic director have kicked in, and he has to be at a soccer game. I'll be over there later, but he's having to be at the gate early. John, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing fine. Wish I could be there, but as you said, this is going to probably be a little abbreviated for me because I'm going to be taking up money and taking temperatures at the gate here in a few minutes.
Yeah, and so it's going to be pretty interesting, but we'll just go ahead and get right into this. We'll have you at least around for a couple of segments. So we'll jump into this first segment. We're going to talk about the high school golf. Last week, the regional tournaments were played, the boys tournament and the girls tournament. The boys were at Crosswinds and the girls were at Franklin Country Club. And we'll just start off with the boys because pretty interesting thing happened there. We had a four-way tie for the last person to be able to make the state tournament, and then we had a two-way tie for the medalist of the tournament. But the four-way tie really applies to us because Barren County freshman Jamison Corbin was in that four-way tie, and he beat out the other three people to qualify for the state tournament. It's got to be a great achievement for a high school freshman there, John.
Oh, you can. Absolutely. I mean, it's, Jamison has slowly, he has gotten better each year that he's played and has kind of been knocking on the door, but to really kind of to play your best at the hardest and most stressful time, I tell you what, it's a heck of an achievement to qualify as a freshman and then to win it in a four-way playoff that even adds even more. So, that's a tremendous achievement. It's something I'm sure he will never forget.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's quite a start there he's actually been, I guess, playing varsity golf for the last couple of years. But as you mentioned, he's been improving year over year, and even during the course of this year, he's improved. He shot an 80, I think it was, with the four-way tie, and then I think there were maybe he shot an 82, but because Ethan Harlow from Glasgow, who started out real well in that regional tournament, he missed the cut of that playoff by one stroke. And I think there were a couple of other Glasgow golfers who were just off that pace. But I tell you what, that regional tournament was quite a treat because it was overcast in the morning, and then it started raining, and then it stopped raining, and then it really started raining about the time all those guys were on the back nine. I mean, they were basically playing. One coach described it to me as a hurricane. They were playing through wind and rain at such an extent. I mean, it was just kind of a rough day to play golf, I'd imagine.
Oh, that even adds even more to it. The only thing it wasn't doing was lightning, and of course that they're going to play these regional and state tournaments. If it rains, it's the lightning. It's the key. And I saw some videos of what was going on there, and it kind of looked like that scene out of Caddyshack when the minister was playing the best round of his life, and he was playing through lightning, gales of wind, and everything before he finally had to give it up at the end, literally.
Yeah.
It was a great accomplishment under extremely tough conditions, and I'm sure this experience this week of getting to play at the state tournament down Bowling Green will be invaluable for him.
Yeah, he tees off, I believe, at 12:30 on number 10 on tomorrow, actually, at the state tournament. The state tournament is a 2-day event, so it has a cut, and we'll see. It's usually pretty tough to make that cut, but good luck to Jamison. I mean, hopefully he can make the cut and get into that day 2. That would even be an even greater experience, but I guess just even getting there as a freshman right now is the kind of thing that you can hang on to and build off of as a golfer.
No doubt about it.
Well, and then meanwhile, the girls' tournament was a fascinating thing. It was played at Franklin Country Club. We wound up with 5 local qualifiers for the state tournament as individuals. But I want to kind of talk about the team setup first because this kind of goes back to the changes they made and how players qualify for the state tournament. They made the changes before last year's golf season started. And so one thing that happened was South Warren ended up winning. They shot a 308, I think it was. Glasgow was second with a 317. And Coach Robert said to me, he's like, our score would have been good enough to win a bunch of regions. And I was like, yeah, and I didn't really think about it too much, but I knew it was a good score. Then I looked at it. Of the other 12 regions, they would have won 8 of them with a 317, Glasgow would have as a team. And they'd have been second in all the ones that they didn't win in every other tournament as well. I mean, that was an incredible round, but they changed rules last year, and only the team winner gets to go, and then the next 8 individuals. And so that kind of that change kind of has stung Glasgow, I think, the last 2 years, because I think they'd have qualified for state the last 2 years as a team by the old rules, John.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of criticism of that change as well when they went to only one team that makes it. Quite honestly, in this state, there's the good golf is kind of located in certain regions for the most part, and there's some teams in other regions that, to be quite honest with you, probably couldn't come in the top 4 or 5 in a lot of regions. So when you're only taking one, you're knocking a whole lot of good teams out. Now, that you can say that, well, that's true in basketball and everything else, but golf is not necessarily. I don't think you should treat each sport the same just because basketball only has one regional champion, or baseball. It doesn't necessarily mean it's fair for golf. But I think the criticism I think one of the reasons why they changed formats, if I can recall, was pace of play at the state tournament. You just had, when you took 2 teams from every region plus some at-large people, it took forever to play.
Yeah.
And I think that was the thinking right there. But boy, it sure has knocked out some good teams this last couple of years, and Glasgow has proved all year to be one of the better teams in the state of Kentucky. And it's unfortunate for them. I mean, they've been in the same region with South Warren, and it's really been South Warren and Glasgow have been the 2 top teams all year. Barron the Barron girls finished strong too. They were 3rd in a really good region, but at least Glasgow got. I think they had 2 players. Is that right? 2 players or 3 players qualify off that team.
Yeah, they ended up with
as
3
individuals.
Yeah, they ended up with 3.
Yep.
And to your point about Barron's score, I mean, their score would have won 2 other regions, just their round as well. So I mean, they had the 5th. Glasgow had the 5th best round in the state. Barron County's round score would have won 2 other regions that will have a qualifier at state. So I mean, to your point,
right.
I mean, Barron had a great day as well. They ended up with 2 qualifiers as well. We'll talk about theirs first because. Bree Russell was an expected qualifier, I would say, because, I mean, she's been a strong golfer her entire career.
I think she shot 79.
Yeah, and then an interesting thing that broke down was that Taylor Gauntz and Grayson Flatt from Glasgow, they had to do a playoff for the 8th qualifier, individual qualifier. Taylor Gauntz, a senior, she ended up winning that on the 3rd hole. So, I mean, that was quite a nail-biter in its own right. So, congratulations to Taylor. She's never been to state. And
yeah, that's great for her as a senior, too, to never be there. And I think she made about a 4-footer to win it.
Yeah,
or to qualify.
Yeah, I mean, she and Grayson Flatt were dead even, and then she made a great putt to put herself into the state tournament. And then for Glasgow, you had Abby Lee. I guess that's to be expected. I mean, she's one of the top golfers, not just in this region, but in the state, as we've already kind of talked about. Nina McMurtry, who's had a great year starting back in the summer. She qualified. She's just a junior. And then Bailey Birdsell, who is also, I think, just a junior. She also qualified for state. And so of those 3 golfers, and you factor in Grayson Flatt, of the 4 golfers that were in contention for Glasgow, 3 of them are back next year, so that's good for the team. But Abby Lee has kind of been the leader of the squad for the year. So I mean, you look at going to state. I mean, you look at Abby Lee's had a great year. You look at the couple of girls, McKenna Stahl and Faith Martin from South Warren, and Nina McMurtry and even Bree Russell in that mix. I mean, we've got a number of players from this area. When the state tournament starts on Friday, they'll have a chance to win or place real well at the state tournament.
Yeah, I think Abby Lee finished 2nd in the region. Is that right? I think she shot 73.
Yeah, she was 1 stroke behind McKenna Stahl from South Warren.
That's correct. And so obviously, she'll have a. I think there's a couple of the Glasgow girls that for sure will be, one of the. Favorites to maybe top 5, top 10 in the state there had to go in as individuals, but it's tough that you can't qualify as a team. But
right.
I think Glasgow I think they had 3 players, if I can recall it, shot in the 70s. That's pretty good playing.
Yeah, I mean, they had a good day, and I tell you what, I think at the turn they were actually up on South Warren as a team score, and were in pretty good shape. But a couple of them had struggles on the back 9, and the number 3 golfer for South Warren was really the difference. She ended up shooting 77, and she ended up her score proved to be the basic difference in the team scores. So, and that's kind of what happens at these regions. You look at, you know your top 2 golfers usually are going to do what you expect them to do. It's at 3 and 4 and even 5 that are going to be the separator for the team scores most years.
Well, I mean, it's regardless of how it works out. I mean, I know, from Glasgow's perspective, they'd love to qualify as a team to be in that team competition. Because if you don't qualify as a team, you're obviously not in the team competition up there. But the 3 kids from Glasgow and the 2 from Barren, they will be in the overall individual competition. And it looks like they're going to have great weather this week, and we wish them the best.
Yeah, it'll be really good, and congratulations to them all. I will be down there tomorrow for when Jamison Corbin plays, and then I'll be back down there Friday and probably Saturday for the girls' state tournament. And I'm looking forward to it. We've already talked about this. I mean, Abby Lee and Faith Martin of South Warren, McKinnon, Nita McMurtry, they're all in the hunt. I would say going into the girls' state tournament, Marshall County's got to be the favorite. I mean, they've been the top team really in the state. They shot under 300 as a team in their region. Their top 4 golfers were the top 4 individuals in their region last week. So they've got to be considered one of the favorite teams. I think there's a girl from Bullitt East or Bullitt Central who's a really strong golfer. There's a couple from up in the Louisville area. So, I mean, it'll be...
I was told by that Marshall County girls has arguably the best either freshman or 8th grader in the country that's on their team. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she's been lighting it up, I tell you that.
Right, and Taylor County is probably the favorite, even over St. X or Trinity. I can't remember who won out of the Louisville region. Is either St. X or Trinity. I think it's Trinity. But I believe Taylor County is probably the favorite to come out of the boys.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this because they used to be in the same region with our schools around here until they made that change last year. They've had a strong boys golf program going on a number of years now, and they've been a threat to win. And I don't know, either they're the defending state champions or they were runners-up last year. I can't remember which way it panned out for them. So, yeah, I mean, we've got some great golf in this area. As you mentioned, there are pockets of areas in the state that have produced great golfers, and we live in one.
That's exactly right. So, should be fun.
Yep. Well, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back to talk about some college football.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, college football kept on rolling over the weekend for some programs, and others are considering rolling again. But we'll just start off with the ones that are, I guess, important to us in this general area. Let's start with WKU. Their first couple of games or first 3 games were kind of interesting in the fact that their defense didn't play as well as I think a lot of us expected it to, and their offense struggled a little bit, which was a little bit unusual for a Tyson Hilton team. But they managed to put things together on Saturday and beat Middle Tennessee State, their great rival, 20-17. It's their first Conference USA game, and so it's a conference win. And I guess that's good for them, and that sets them up. They host Marshall this coming Saturday at 6:30. We kind of discussed whether or not Conference USA was going to have a rough year, that WKU could be the best team in the conference or the second best team in the conference despite the struggles to start the season, John.
Yeah, I don't know how to take it. I mean, they got a win. They beat a rival, Middle, but Middle was 0-3. Now Middle's 0-4.
Not looked real good.
And it was 20-17, and is it convincing? No, but it's a win. And when you're playing football, you play so many. You don't play a whole lot of games. Any win is a good win, and And of course, you got to start with something, and so that was a win. I'm not for sure what it means or what it says, because I don't think Middle's is very strong. But I can tell you it's better than a loss.
Yeah, it'd have been a real bad thing if they had lost that game to Middle, not just because it's a rivalry game, but because, as you said, I mean, Middle was winless coming into the game and really had not looked very good in those 3 losses they had prior to this one. No,
they did not, and the offense did not turn the ball over. That part's good, but did they look great? I don't know about that. Their Western special teams was good. I think a 53-yard field goal and another long field goal. So that part was good, but the defense was okay. Held them to 17 points. But would I call it a powerful performance? No, I would not. Right. I think we'll read a little bit more about it. How where Western is and how much they've improved with the game against Marshall.
Yeah, I think that's a much bigger game in terms of us determining what kind of season WKU is actually having. Because Marshall offensively is pretty near unstoppable, and so that means WKU, their defense is not just only going to be tested, but that means that to some degree they're going to have to figure out how offensively to keep pace with Marshall, and that's the problem that they've really had, is just trying to keep pace offensively with anybody.
Yeah, and they've played some good, the Toppers have faced some good offenses. Yeah. Louisville's got a good offense. Liberty's, I think I'm right, still has not lost. I think they're 4-0 now, so that may prove to be not a bad loss to Liberty. Mm-hmm. But Marshall football is like Marshall basketball. They can score.
Yeah, defense is secondary. Hey, here's an interesting piece of news for you here, John. Apparently, this comes from Indiana football. Apparently, they have rescheduled their game with Western Kentucky University. It was supposed to be played this year at Memorial Stadium. Will now be played September 15th, 2029 in Bloomington. Do you think COVID will be over with by then?
I think it's hopefully we'll be safe from COVID in 2029. If not, we're in a world of trouble. I can tell you that.
I just find it fascinating. They're like, hey, we're going to reschedule this game for 9 years in the future.
Why? That's the other thing I don't understand with football. Why do they have these contracts that are 4 or 6 years ahead? That's another thing that never has made a whole lot of sense to me. I mean, it's not like you've got to take like boat trips and all this other things that you have to work it out. But that's what it is all across the country. These football schedules are 3, 4, 5, 6 years in advance. This one's 9. I always felt that was a little odd.
Yeah. I just thought it was amusing. Let's move on to Kentucky, because they ended up losing a game to Ole Miss 42-41. I think maybe we had questions coming into the season about Kentucky's offense, just because I think that happens every year to some degree, even though Terry Wilson was back. But we didn't really have any questions about their defense because, I mean, you and I have said this on this show, Mark Stoops has built a defensive juggernaut for the most part in Kentucky, but, man, they could not slow down Ole Miss for anything on Saturday.
No, and Ole Miss couldn't really slow down Kentucky either. Kentucky is they're like the Falcons in the NFL. They're finding ways to lose. They kind of outplayed Auburn and lost. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to imagine that a team could rush for over 400 yards like Kentucky did, with 3 players had over 100 yards, and you still lose. And they did, because they couldn't stop Ole Miss in any way. And then it comes to overtime, and I feel Kentucky gets the ball first and scores, and then they miss the extra point, and Ole Miss scores within 2 plays, and they make the extra point, and that's the difference in the game. And the missed extra point, and I feel bad for that kid, because he was the field goal kicker was vilified by a lot of people, but daggone, when you give up that many points, I know you can point to a missed extra point, but Kentucky defensively had about 100 chances to stop Ole Miss during the regular play of that game that shouldn't have even gone to overtime.
Yeah, coaches often like to point out the fact that the play that lost the game obviously is not the play that necessarily lost the game. And I'm sure that's exactly how Stoops felt after that game was over with, because you just look at the kicker by himself. I mean, if you're vilifying the kicker because after your team gave up 42 points, you're really looking at the wrong group of people. The special teams was not necessarily the difference.
No, and should he have made it? Yes, that's pretty routine at that level. But I'll remind people, Kentucky scored first, and even though they missed the extra point, they could have stopped Ole Miss.
That is true, which is exactly right. And Ole Miss, Kentucky, for their, they get the opportunity now to host Mississippi State this coming weekend. Mississippi State went from the greatest team in the SEC ever to the worst team in the SEC ever within 1 week.
They're both teams are kind of stung coming in. Kentucky 0-2 and losing the way they lost to Ole Miss, and Mississippi State, after the great win against LSU, just completely laid an egg, losing to Arkansas, who I think had lost 20 in a row within the conference.
Yeah,
a stunning kind of loss, to be perfectly honest with you. You didn't expect Mississippi State to play as well against Arkansas as they did against LSU. It's going to be a natural letdown, but you still thought they would be good enough to be an Arkansas team, and they weren't. Well,
and look, their grad transfer quarterback went from the best quarterback in the SEC to the worst in 1 week as well. I mean, he absolutely had a brutal day against Arkansas.
He did, and he didn't put. He had a big day against LSU numbers wise. He threw for 600 yards, but he also threw, I think, 3 interceptions against LSU.
Right.
Well, that interception bug continued against Arkansas, and Arkansas had the benefit of a week's worth of film on Mike Leach's team, and they defended much better than LSU did.
Yeah, and what's interesting, though, I think there's a lot of buzz down in Mississippi about picking up Mike Leach and Lane Kiffin as their two, premier school, SEC school coaches. And they are high-profile coaches, and I think Mike Leach is an offensive genius. I think Lane Kiffin is overrated. That's just my opinion. But at the same time, you look at Mike Leach's teams, he may be an offensive genius, but they're very often very shaky defensively. And so I'd imagine for both those teams all year, what we're going to see is 1 week it's like, oh, my gosh, they're great. And the next week, how did they lose that game? And so you look at Kentucky coming up against Mississippi State. Maybe they would hope that Mississippi State had won that game against Arkansas, because I imagine that allows Leach to get his team refocused. And we'll see what happens with the quarterback, because you're right, he's kind of a 50-50 proposition.
Yeah, it's a big game for both programs, obviously. It's the problem this year with the SEC is there's no cupcakes, really.
Right.
You can't schedule 3 or 4 wins like most teams in the SEC have done in the past, and to be sitting at 0-2, you just have to look down your schedule. You just can't really find an easy win anywhere.
Well, and the SEC always like to say that they beat up on each other, and this year that's definitely going to be the case. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays off whenever we start looking at postseason and the championship and
right.
bowls and all that kind of jazz. Because we will have a bunch of teams that'll be 5-6 or whatever it is, 5-5, how many ever games that we wind up playing. So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out.
There'll be some, you're right, but I can tell you two, it's not. Alabama and Georgia's not going to be 5-5.
No, apparently not.
And Florida. Throw Florida in there. Those three look like the cream of the crop to me.
Yeah, you know what, though? I still, when it comes to Georgia and Florida, I'm still kind of a wait-and-see kind of person, especially Florida of late. Georgia
I'm not. I am with Georgia. I'm actually more doubtful of Georgia because I'm not sold on their quarterback. I think Florida's for real.
Really?
Yes.
I would say in the last few years, they've found ways to lose games they definitely weren't supposed to. So, but you might be right. Florida may be back. And
got a quarterback this year. They shipped the other quarterback to Arkansas.
Yeah, a trade. I'll trade you this quarterback, and I'll get a different one. How about that?
Yep.
Meanwhile, Louisville got to take a Friday off, which means that they didn't give up any points.
That's right. They needed to buy.
They did, and they get to play Georgia Tech, which has been uncharacteristically, I would say, not good defensively. But maybe that's because usually their offense sets their defense, and they've changed their philosophy at Georgia Tech. And so
they've had a massive change in philosophy because they went from that basically the wishbone where they rarely ever throw it to now they're more of a traditional team. So they've got a whole, they're in that transition of terms of personnel and so forth.
Yeah, and it looked like they were. They did not look terribly good so far, and so maybe this is a week that Louisville got the bye and that they can kind of get healthy and get focused on playing Georgia Tech, and healthy I think is the big thing for Louisville right now.
I agree. Yeah. Their quarterback, they took him off on the stretcher this last game, but I think he's okay.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. I'm sure you have to get to the gate and start checking temperatures and taking numbers there, John.
I do, and but I have all the confidence in the world that you can pull this last 30 minutes off.
Hey, I wrote a script for this one, so it better be good.
Okay, all right.
All right, thanks, John. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks, James.
Brown Sports Bag, brought to you
Bye-bye.
by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, I'm back. John Butler had to take care of his duties as an assistant athletic director, and so he's out at the soccer complex where the Barren County Trojans will be playing Grayson County tonight. I believe that game's at 5:30. I'll be headed over there when the show's over with to shoot some photos and get some info. If you want to know about the photos and stuff that we have photos, videos, some game reports, this kind of thing at 104thescore.com. You can always follow us on Twitter at 104thescore, and on Facebook you can find the links to those galleries that we have, some game reports, some videos that we've done. We'll be doing some different things as we go along throughout the rest of this particular fall season. And then, of course, basketball right now is on track to begin practice October 26th. So, in about 3 weeks, they can begin practice. The games are still scheduled to be played starting the Monday after Thanksgiving. So, right now the winter sports are all on path. That'll include swimming season is during the winter, so that'll be going on as well. Meanwhile, we still have high school football, and there were games played Friday night, and we'll talk about those first. We'll start off actually with the Glasgow Scotties game at Logan County. Originally, Glasgow was supposed to actually, to be honest with you, to some degree, I can't even remember who they were originally supposed to play on Friday night because the way that it was set up was last week, Barren County was a COVID red county, which meant our case count was higher, was above a certain level, and so Glasgow schools could not have home sporting events during that time. And so Glasgow was originally supposed to have a home football game, but that got canceled. And that also actually ended up that part of it didn't affect Barren County because they were supposed to play Breckenridge, and then Breckenridge was not going to come and play at Barren County, and then Barren County was going to host Allen County, but then it ended up Allen County was in the red and could not play. So Barren County ended up with a bye week. We'll get back to that. So Glasgow ended up playing over at Logan County. Logan County's, traditionally, Logan County's not had a very strong program. It's but in the last couple of years, well, I guess about the last 4 years, they really kind of turned things around. They had a young group of guys who came in, got a new head coach. They broke a long losing streak, and then they went on their own winning streak for a while. They're a 4A program. They're in a district with Madisonville, North Hopkins, and I believe it is who else is in that district? Madisonville, North Hopkins, Hopkins County Central, and Hopkinsville. Those teams are all in that district. I believe maybe Callaway County is the other team in that district. There are 5 teams in that district. And so they've been making the playoffs and done pretty well. And so it was going to be a tough test for Glasgow to go over there and pick up a win, and especially considering the circumstances that occurred within the game. It became a challenge, but the Scotties prevailed and quite impressively, really, especially on the defensive side of the ball. We'll start with the things within the game. So John Carter Myers, the quarterback, he scored a touchdown early in the game, then got knocked out of the game. And so Zach Poore, the designated backup, was injured earlier in the season. So it landed on the shoulders of freshman Easton Jesse to come in and run the offense, and he did a fine job. They also got some big plays, especially Carter McKeever. He had a touchdown return to open the second half, 88 yards, and that put the Scotties up at that point 13-2. Then they got a Hunter Scott, who's their usual full-time running back, apparently had an ankle injury, and so he primarily played defense for the rest of the game. I guess they wanted to take some of the strain off of him, and so Jaden Wyrock came in, and Kieran Stockton came in. Jaden at running back, Kieran at fullback. Glasgow went more to an I formation out of the shotgun they've been running, and took advantage of that, and Jaden Wyrock got a touchdown, and Glasgow ended up winning 19-10. A couple of interesting things stat-wise from the game was this. Wyrock ran for 65 yards and a touchdown. Like I said, Carter McKeever had the kick return to open the second half. Logan County ran 16 more plays in the game, but they had 23 fewer yards in total offense. I mean, so the Scotties really made big plays on defense, stopped a couple of drives that were scoring threats by the Cougars. And, it turned out to be a big win for Glasgow. They were coming off the loss the week before to South Warren, which is arguably one of the best teams in 5A. They beat their rivals, Bowling Green, 10-7 on Friday night. Bowling Green had been ranked ahead of them in the polls. I'm sure I've not seen the polls for today or tomorrow, the ones that'll be out tomorrow, of course. But I'm sure South Warren will be moving up. I would put them as the 1 or 2 team in the state from what I've seen. And so even though Glasgow lost that game to them the week before, they competed and played hard. That's what Coach Jeff Garman said after the game. And so that proved to be true. That grittiness of the defense and the players stepping in under duress and pulling out that win was huge. And that leads to this Friday, the Scotties will be hosting Caldwell County. It'll be another tough matchup. Caldwell was not a team originally on their schedule. This is one of those situations that's been rescheduled, and so we're not in the red this week. And so Glasgow will be able to host Caldwell County on Friday night. And Caldwell is 2-2 coming in the game. They lost Friday night to Mayfield, 21-20. Mayfield, one of perennial 2A powers in the state. And, they're a tough team, so this is going to be a big game. Interesting thing there is a former offensive coordinator for Glasgow, Will Barnes, I believe now is the head coach at Caldwell County. So that'll be a reunion of sorts between the coaching staffs there between those two teams. So that'll be a pretty interesting little sidebar to note. Meanwhile, as I mentioned, Barren County did not play on Friday night. They ended up getting every opportunity they tried to put forth to play a game, got canceled. So they will be playing at Central Hardin on this Friday. That is a district game. Central Hardin has not played in 3 weeks. I think the last time they played was Henderson County. They had a positive test, from what I read, on their team a couple of weeks ago. So basically they shut down all operations for their football program. So this will be Central Hardin's first game back from that. They entered the game 0-2, but obviously they've not played in a while, so we really don't know a whole lot about them as a team. They were pretty good last year, but they lost some key players, and that's going to be interesting to see how that pans out for them. And meanwhile, Barren, they won their opener against Monroe County. Then they lost their next 2 games, and they're trying to get back on the winning ways, and it'll be a tough task up there at Central Hardin. That game will be broadcast on Nash 103.7 with Jay Turner on the call, and I'm guessing John Butler and Robert Bauer will be there with him. And so that's going to be an interesting contest for them. The Trojans have struggled a little bit offensively in their last couple of games, trying to get on the same page. Their defense has played pretty well in spots. They ended up, giving up a couple of late touchdowns to Greenwood and losing that game in a lopsided score, but it was closer than that final score. And kind of the same thing with Hancock. Their defense played fairly well overall, but they just couldn't get enough offense going to keep that balanced out. So, that's what we're going to be looking at with those two, with that game right there, is what have the Trojans worked on the last couple of weeks to get ready for Central Hardin. I'm guessing they're going to have to come up with some sort of offensive wrinkles or some sort of things to probably try to keep the ball away from the Bruins, because Bruins last year, that was a big thing. I mean, the Bruins, when they had the ball, they could score pretty effectively. And, Wouldn't be surprised if that's not the case again this year. Meanwhile, the Gouverneur Colonels on Friday night, they ended up playing Webster County and losing that game. They're 0-3 on the season. They had the week off before that. They open their district this coming Friday against Crittenden County at 7 o'clock. Crittenden comes in 3-1, and that'll be again a tough task for the Colonels. Crittenden's pretty good this year so far, based on what I was looking at from their scores and just who they've played and competed against. So that'll be a tough task for them. And, the interesting thing about the high school football season is, as I tell you all this stuff on Monday, it could all be changed on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or even Friday, I guess, from what we've seen. So stay tuned for that. The upside is it's a fall break. So hopefully one of the things that's happening is people are getting an opportunity while being outside of school to kind of regroup and get things squared away as we head on into the second half of this football season. It's been an interesting season, and I want to tell you about a game that happened that's not local, but a game that happened on Friday night, because I mentioned Logan County's district. In the last couple of years, it's been Logan County, Madisonville, North Hopkins, and Hopkinsville have been the three teams that have been in the hunt for the top spot in that particular district. And on Friday night, one of the things that happened was Hopkins County Central stunned Madisonville North Hopkins. I think the final was 40-35. Somebody had told me that was the first time Hopkins County had beaten Madisonville in 17 games, and by my count, Hopkins County had lost 19 in a row prior to winning that game. So that was a huge upset in that district, and that kind of resets things in that district a little bit, I think, because Hopkinsville has also been on a 2-week hiatus because of COVID. And so, that district schedule is going to be curious as we get down to the end of the stretch. And what happens out of that is this year and last year we're playing an inter-district schedule, but I believe what happens is when we get to the end of that, the team that wins out of the Allen County, Franklin, Simpson, Warren East, Warren Central, Russell County district will end up playing the winner out of that district in the third round of the playoffs. So that's kind of how that affects things going down the road for those who are interested in, looking down to the playoffs, that kind of thing. All right, this is the Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. When we come back, we're going to take basically a 5-minute tour of the sports world.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
All right, I'm back. Like I said earlier, John's out at the soccer complex having to do his assistant athletic director duties, and so I will be out there once the show's over with. The Barren County Trojans play Grayson County boys soccer out there at 5:30. So should be an interesting game. The Trojans are actually on a roll right now. They've had one loss, but they've been rolling. They rolled Saturday over Franklin Simpson, won big a couple of times last week. Aiden Niken has really started picking up his scoring. Seth Mitchell has also been contributing on the scoring side and assists. Niken led the state in scoring last year as a sophomore. So, they're rolling along right now. Their only loss was to the Glasgow Scotties earlier in the year, 3-0. Glasgow lost at Ohio County on Saturday. And they were down 3 starters, had a backup goalie in who played well overall. But Ohio County has a solid squad. Every year Ohio County has a solid squad. And so they just outmuscled them before it was all said and done. And so, we're basically, this is the final week of the regular season. The district soccer tournaments will begin next week. I believe Glasgow and Barren County girls are the only 2 teams in that district this year on the girls' side. And so they will play, I think it's October 13th at 6 o'clock over at the soccer complex. Both of them will qualify for the regional tournament since 2 teams qualify. But they'll be playing, for the pride of the, winning a district title. Little interesting kind of breakdown there. So Allen County started a soccer program, but they don't have a girls-only program. They do have a boys program, and so Allen County's boys are in the district. Glasgow and Barren have both beaten them already. So that district tournament will start next week as well. I think the way it works out is Glasgow will wind up with a bye, which means Barron and Allen will have to play in the first round, and then the winner will play Glasgow for the championship. And like I said already, like the girls, the two teams in that district championship will qualify for the regional tournament, and that'll be played the following week. So anyway, that's kind of the rundown of soccer. Let's turn our attention to the NFL a little bit, because a couple of things kind of curious. I mean, if you're a fantasy football player and you are trying to set your roster each week, and you have to have that thing set, say you're in a league, you have to have it set for the first game is played each week. So I guess that's by 6 o'clock on Thursday. I believe that's what that is. All kinds of moving parts happen between Thursday and Saturday or Sunday. For example, one of the things that happened was the New England Patriots were supposed to play the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday. That game will be played tonight because New England quarterback Cam Newton tested positive for COVID-19, and so he's not able to play, and they've done a whole bunch of other testing of the Patriots. Thus far, it's been reported that all other tests have been negative. It's amazing, really. And so they are going ahead with the game, and the game will be played tonight between the Patriots and Chiefs. I don't know. I mean, I'd guess Jarrett Stidham will start for the Patriots at quarterback, I guess, or Bobby Hoyer, or, the lunch man or something. I have no idea who'll be starting for the Patriots at quarterback. It'll be somebody. And that can't be good for them, because, first of all, they have to stop Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, which no one has done thus far this season. And Bill Belichick might be a football genius, especially on the defensive side of the ball, but they couldn't solve Patrick Mahomes last year, and very little chance they'll be solving him tonight. That game will be at 6:05 p.m. I believe if you're a betting person, the line jumped 4 points after it was reported Cam Newton was out. So the Chiefs are favored by 11 now. They're an 11-point favorite. So there you go. And then there is another Monday Night Football game, and it's a battle between the Packers and Falcons. And I'm just here to feel sympathy for Falcons fans. I just have to tell you. I don't think I've ever seen a team like that. They are 0-3. They've managed to lose all 3 games after having leads. And it's just it's an amazing thing to witness. And so they get to play Aaron Rodgers, who apparently is playing with a chip on his shoulder after the Packers drafted a quarterback this past draft. And he's out to prove that he's not done. And he's been lighting folks up so far. So, I guess the best advice I could give the Falcons is don't get a lead, play from behind. Because if you get a lead, that's just going to make Aaron Rodgers even angrier, I imagine. So anyway, again, if you're a Falcons fan, I have sympathy for you. I mean, the Falcons are like a franchise. I would say they're akin to the Saints, but the Saints have now won a Super Bowl, and the Falcons have not managed to get one under their belt. They've managed to figure out a way to lose one there as well. So, I mean, in very Falcons fashion. And so, historically speaking, though, the Falcons and the Saints were, they were rival franchises because they were both moribund franchises. They couldn't get wins. They didn't have winning seasons. They constantly lost. They constantly struggled. The Saints got to a Super Bowl, pulled off an onside kick, stunned hometown boy Peyton Manning, and beat the Colts. And now you have the Falcons out here. Got to a Super Bowl, blew a 28-3 lead to the Patriots, and now they've started this season by continuing to look like a team that just can't figure out a way to win games. So there you go. That's how that goes if you're a Falcons fan. And so the kind of fascinating thing about that, though, is it fits in this, the only team the Cowboys have beaten. And again, I actually don't feel any sympathy for Cowboy fans. They had plenty of success in the 70s and the 90s to tide you all over. But, yeah, I do feel bad for the Cowboys because, Dak Prescott plays there, and I kind of like Dak Prescott. And he started yesterday by, I think it was breaking the franchise record with 174 passing yards in the first quarter. Then I believe his team proceeded to give up 35 unanswered points to the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns were without starting running back Nick Chubb. They had Kareem Hunt, who's a good running back, and two other guys whose names I thought I knew, but they just had last names I knew, not first names. And those guys ran all over the Cowboys defense. And so it went from looking like, oh, my goodness, look at this, to, oh, my goodness, look at this. And so now the Cowboys have one win. That only win is against the Falcons, and that was a come-from-behind win. Look, they almost came back in that game yesterday. I mean, they can put up points, but then they couldn't, seal it, either because they have turnovers at inopportune times, or they just can't stop anyone. And so here they are, 1-3. And that's just, just the way it goes, I guess. One other thing about the NFL season, I guess, as it is, the Tennessee Titans and Pittsburgh Steelers are two of the other undefeated teams. They were supposed to play this weekend. They ended up not being able to play because of a COVID outbreak with the Titans. That game has been rescheduled for October 25th. You can hear all the Titans football on 105.3 The Point with Mike Keith on the call there, and that's your official station for the Titans here in Southern Kentucky. And so anyway, if you were tuning in over the weekend and you missed the news and you were like, what happened to the Titans and Steelers game? Well, that's what happened to it. That game has been moved, has been postponed, and will be made up October 25th. Now, one other interesting thing, I suppose, that's going on in the sports world is we're in the NBA Finals, if you're into that kind of stuff. And the Lakers looked like they just were way too good for the Heat prior to Sunday night's game. And the Heat had no answers for Anthony Davis. They were going to be without Bam Adebayo, the Kentucky product, and they were going to be without Goran Dragic, their shooting guard, point guard. I mean, he scores more than he passes. But so that's what they were facing. They had not been able to stop the Lakers the first two games. I mean, they were just getting mashed in the first two quarters of those two games. Got into big holes, played even in the second half. But, when you're down 20, you can't play even and get to win. So, you come into Sunday night's game and you're like, there's just no way the Heat have any chance. I mean, this series is going to be a sweep. It's going to be over with on Tuesday night. It's going to be 4-0. And suddenly Jimmy Butler turns into LeBron James and he puts up 40 points without making a three-pointer. He dishes out 13 assists, grabs 11 rebounds, gets a triple-double right there. So, and meanwhile, LeBron James, basically, here's the deal. Jimmy Butler led the Heat in every statistical category that matters, and LeBron James led the Lakers in every statistical category that matters. But he finished with 25 points and 10 rebounds and 8 assists and, 8 turnovers. And you kind of look at the situation and you say, maybe Jimmy Butler shouldn't have been holding back in those other two games. I mean, maybe he is the best player in the NBA and we just didn't know it. Or he's definitely the best player in the bubble, which they've been in, since July. And it was just an impressive display by Jimmy Butler. I mean, he's a kind of player, I imagine, you want on your team if you are a competitive-minded individual. And he's probably the kind of player you don't want on your team if you like to take weekends and holidays off. So, Jimmy Butler came to play on Sunday night. It was a weekend. I guess everybody else took the weekend off, and he's like, nah, I work Sunday. I'm 7 days a week. So, he put up the numbers. The Heat won the game. I don't think it matters. I really don't. I mean, they play again on Tuesday night. Whatever wake-up call the other members of the Lakers needed to finish off the series, they probably got it right there. And especially if you still don't have Adebayo or Dragic. I think Dragic is done for the playoffs. Adebayo, I believe, could be back on Tuesday. But, I mean, without them, the Lakers can basically do what the Toronto Raptors did with the Golden State Warriors last year when they were down everybody but Steph Curry. Focus on stopping that one man and then dare anybody else to beat you. And that's probably not going to happen, So there's the kind of the deal there. And so that's what we're looking at with the NBA playoffs. Again, they'll play Tuesday. That'll be game 4 of the series, and they'll turn around and play, I think it's Thursday night. And that'll be the last game of the series. I think it'll be over with. LeBron James and the Lakers will have another championship. Listen to Brown Sports Bag, brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.